Hey there, it's Colin. This is my motorcycle vlog. We went out to Canada's East Coast, and my beautiful wife and I on our new to us Goldwing, and figured we would put some miles on it. And so first day was out of London, Ontario up to Ottawa. We stayed with some family in Ottawa, which was nice, and then fired on through to Quebec City. We didn't speak a lot of French, so that was a little tricky. Quebec City's good, but the areas around Montreal, nobody speaks English. Day off the bike in Quebec City worked out really, really well. Had great time, highly recommend. And then we continued on towards Grand Falls, New Brunswick, and that was our day 4. Here's some shots of us along the St. Lawrence River just before we make the big turn down into sort of southern part of Quebec and into New Brunswick. And it was some really nice riding. We had fairly good weather up to this point. It was a good temperature. It wasn't too hot. We had bought modular helmets so then you could, lift your chin and have a drink. And I had coffee on the go much of the trip, or I put cold drinks in that cup. And Joanne on the back also had the same, where she had a big cup that she could drink from whenever she wanted, which was very handy. I highly recommend modular helmets if you're on motorcycle touring like this. As for clothing and packing and that sort of thing, we bought these giant Ziploc bags. They're available on Amazon, and they worked surprisingly well. You can basically, you stick your clothes in them and then you can roll them up to get all the air out, which works really nice for things like sweatshirts and jeans and so on. It really compresses them down. But we had always planned that what we would do is get a hotel somewhere that had some laundry. So that is one of the things that we booked. We were able to send out the clothes. I think 3 times we did that. So one time we ended up going to a laundromat because the hotel all of a sudden didn't have the laundry service that was on booking.ca or whoever I used. And the rest of the time we were able to just send the laundry out, which was very handy. So you don't have to bring as much stuff. So we each had a saddlebag, and then in the back of the bike we had the extras, a regular camera and our electronics and Joanne's purse and the stuff we needed to get to fairly quickly, like our rain stuff and that sort of thing. Highly recommend having really good rain suits if you're touring like this. I wear Frog's Togs pants, highly recommend. They breathe quite a bit. On this trip I had a newer rubber coat. I bought it on Fort 9. It was really nice, like it worked well, but man, you just get overheated with all of the sweat and so on, just from the high humidity and so on, and it really doesn't breathe like the Frog's Togs. I find in super heavy rain though, like eventually the Frog's Togs will let some rain in. As we rode along, we, always looking for a tourist stop. So one of these along here as we came from Grand Falls down into St. John, one of the stops that we made was we saw a sign. It said, hey, come see the world's longest covered bridge in Hartland, New Brunswick. Of course we had to stop. 1,282 feet. Yeah. That's awesome. Across the St. John River. The other one that we saw was, world's largest axe or something like that in Nackawic, New Brunswick. Of course, we had to do a little detour and go have some fun for that. Then as we pulled into Moncton, went right by the Moosehead Brewery, so we got some video of that. And as we cross over this bridge up here, that is the Bay of Fundy, and we really didn't make a point to go there. We probably should have, watch the tide go way in and way out and so on. We were pretty aware of it as we were riding around. There was a lot of tidal area that had completely emptied, and it was just like bare mud, and you could tell it was areas where the water was coming in and out. But that's the Bay of Fundy just off to the left there. Then day 6, well, it was supposed to be a day off the bike is how we had planned it originally, but eventually you go, well, gee, let's go whale watching. Well, whale watching's not in St. John's. Whale watching's in St. Andrew. It's 100 kilometers away. It's not that bad, right? And so we took a little detour on the way there, see the boats that are basically just sort of sitting on their side. They'll completely float, once the water comes in, which is absolutely amazing. But we did a little puttering around on our way there, out to see the whales that day. And we saw a couple. We saw some porpoises, and we saw some minke whales, and had a great time out on the water anyway. I didn't get any video of any whales or not anything close enough to really share, but I did put some still pictures in here of us out on these jet boats and the the St. Andrew's Lighthouse and so on. But it was really great. So the next day is ferry to Digby, Nova Scotia, tying the bike down on the boat, and the boat was kind of rocking in the super heavy duty fog, really heavy rain all day. Almost forgot our bag at the hotel, by the way. Like, got all the way to the ferry and realized, oh my god, the top bag that's supposed to be on the trunk, it's not there. Left it in the parking garage. So we're like, okay, we'll be right back. Went back to the hotel. Luckily, it's still sitting there. Picked it up, fired on back, made it onto the ferry in time. And then basically from Digby, Nova Scotia, all the way to the bottom of Nova Scotia is just woods. There's nothing basically between Digby and we went to Lunenburg. That was sort of over, but we rode through wet forest for hours. And luckily, the bike's great on gas, does 400 kilometers on a tank just about, so that was fine. And we had filled up in Digby, so we were okay. But it was a long ride with absolutely nothing. No houses, no anything, just woods, driving along, a few cars, whatever. And eventually we found this cute little restaurant, and we stopped and had a pit stop for, a good 45 minutes to, dry off a little bit and have something to eat and relax and whatever. And then we pushed on through, and this is us coming down through the Cove as we come to Lunenburg, Nova Scotia, home of the Bluenose. And we saw the Bluenose coming in, and then off to Peggy's Cove. And I have never seen fog like you get on the East Coast. It really was like pea soup. Watch, there's a motorcycle comes by, you don't even see him before he shows up. I couldn't believe how bad the visibility was. And the windscreen's just getting coated in just light fog, So absolutely crazy. Next day, we are off from Halifax up to Moncton and saw some friends for breakfast, which was absolutely fantastic. And then this is us coming from across the Halifax Bridge. And then up we go to Truro, Nova Scotia. We had a little break because we had some wet weather again. But, you get used to it by this point. Like, the rain gear's ready to go. You put it on. I have heavy rubber flocked gloves. I call them my garbage gloves. But, whatever. Not tons of protection if I were to come off the bike, but certainly really nice to have when it's super wet weather like that. Then your hands don't get cold and so on. It did eventually get a little bit nicer. You can see it was super, super windy. At the end of Bay of Fundy, it is absolutely amazingly windy through there. I guess the wind gets channeled all the way up, and absolutely amazing. So the next day was supposed to be a sort of day off the bike as well. That was day 9, and we were like, okay, fine, let's go to PEI. And Atlanticade was supposed to be on. There was all kinds of bikes. We caught the very tail end of Atlanticade. It was still set up. There was a few show bikes. That was nice. It was in Summerside PEI. And then we figured we would just ride around the island and so on. And we did take the bridge. And free to get there, and $20 for a motorcycle to get back. So that's not that bad, but absolutely amazing. You can't see land from either end. Basically, as you're off on this bridge, you can't see anything but the bridge. And so over we went, and beautiful day for it, like sunny and warm and a light breeze and so on. Just well worthwhile. Confederation Bridge is pretty amazing. It was okay with the Atlanticade. There was a few things set up, a few bikes and so on. And so we made it, sort of. Okay, let's go see, as you do, Anna Green Gables. Yeah, I saw a bald eagle. That was the best footage I could do. It wasn't bad, eh? And of course, PEI, so home of Cavendish Farms, Cavendish potatoes. Huge operation, obviously. There was tons of stuff for Cavendish Farms, but this is just part of it. And cute little towns. I like all the little colored houses and so on like that. Just very East Coast and very nice. And yeah, that was really cool. And then this, we came over the hill and it was just beautiful little rolling hills and so on. It was like, wow, it's just amazing countryside, cute little houses and little rolling hills. This is as you're on the Atlantic coast side of PEI. Buzzing along and get a glimpse of it, and it was just like, hang on a second, we just got to pull over the bike and have a look at this, because it was really nice, all the hay out in the field and all of that. So I pulled on over and check out the beautiful rolling hills and the hay and the cute little houses. That was nice. And then, of course, here we are pulling into Anne of Green Gables. And, did the usual, walked around the house, checked it out. That's where it was shot, but not where it was based on. There is another house, but yeah, the movie or one of the shows or something was shot at that place. Here we are coming back across Confederation Bridge. You do pay on the way back. So $20 on the way back, nothing to come over to PEI. The other option is the ferry. And then this, we decided that we would hug right along the Atlantic coast against PEI, which is called the Acadian Coast. We had kept seeing these flags, and they looked like a France flag with a yellow star. And eventually it was hot and we wanted to pull over, and we found this beautiful beach. It was so shallow. People would just be out on the sandbars with chairs and tents and so on, sitting with their feet in the water. And then day 10, headed for home. We figured we'd go up to Miramichi and across 108. Well, that was an adventure. Beautiful. Up to Miramichi was really good. You know, the roads in New Brunswick are not great, sadly. There's a lot of bumps and so on. I had a pit stop, and then it's 130 kilometers. And this is the nice part of this road. It's a logging road, and there is nothing. And giant trucks shooting by at full speed. We had to stop a few times. There was over a kilometer of gravel. New Brunswick, you see these moose ads like this all the time. Watch for moose, watch for moose. And they have lots of moose fencing and so on. This is the only moose we saw. Anyway, Edmundston on to Montreal. And we had planned we're going to have a day off the bike on Montreal. This is us crossing the border into Quebec again. And so this is all the way up to the St. Lawrence and then across. A little bit of wet weather again, unfortunately, but you know, at this point, like I said, you're ready for the rain. You just, oh well, you stop, you put on the rain gear, and you continue on. It's less and less of a big deal as you're on vacation like this. Anyway, the weather cleared up a little bit. We got out of the rain gear and continued on. We took a little pit stop here, just getting onto some back roads. This is the hills right as the Laurentians, the Appalachians, the whatever, that mountain range basically crosses this section of land. And there's all these like hills sticking up just in the middle of flat country land. So we got off the major highway, and I think we were looking for a gas station as well, which again, more wet weather as we got up towards the St. Lawrence and we're coming along. Man, did we ever see a lot of motorcycles with people with trailers. And a little jealous of those people, I must say, because we were tightly packed. And then the weather got nicer again. Again, you get these nice hills and so on. And a day off the bike in Montreal this time. So that was really good, being a tourist and not having to look at the bike for a little bit. And then off we go again. From Montreal, we went out the end of the island and around the city, basically, and crossed at Hawkesbury. And so, you know, you still get a little bit of Montreal traffic, which they drive crazy. So that was good to avoid right downtown Montreal. And then here we are at the last bridge, basically at Hawkesbury, going back into Ontario. And so as we cross back into Ontario, we're getting home, you know, almost there anyway. So that was good. So here we come back into Ontario. And of course you can't avoid the wet weather, right? So a little bit more. And it clears up again, thank goodness, you know, a little bit anyway. Like, it's still a little overcast and whatever, but it's fairly warm too, right? So it's not a big deal. Here we are out towards Kingston and Gananoque and and just riding, 401. Stayed at the Holiday Inn, which had great breakfast, of course, so that was good. So last day 14 from Belleville, and we pushed through to London. And so it's boring road. Like 401, there's nothing to see for the most part. And then we took the 407 to avoid traffic in Toronto. Didn't want to really do stop and go on the 401 and so on. And luckily you can take the 407 almost right through to Milton. And then we made it home safe, 4,550 kilometers. And I appreciate you all for watching, and subscribe. Thanks.